I'm the superintendent of schools for Sunnyvale School District. We're really grateful to have all of you here. It looks like we've got 89 attendees and counting at this point, which is wonderful. This is really our third community forum or listening session. We did one last, was it Thursday? Last Thursday as part of a Board of Education study session. And during that one, we had some technical difficulties and a good number of the people were not able to get in, but that showed us that we needed to have a couple more, and that was a really good idea because we had our second one Monday night at 5:30, and just short of 200 people were attendees in that meeting, and looks like we'll be, if maybe not that number, but a good number again tonight. So that's really good. And our intention is to share our plans, share the work that's been done so far in preparing for reopening in August, and provide you all with the chance to make comments. We're really interested. We have two Board of Education members here and staff. We're really interested in hearing what your experiences have been, what they are now, and what questions that you have as we look towards the future. So with that, I'm going to introduce the people who are the panelists, because some of the people you may know and some of them you may not. So I'm going to do it as they appear on my screen. First is Jesus Romero. He's new to our district. He's the assistant to the superintendent, and we're really glad to have him here. He's going to be one of the timekeepers. He'll be the timekeeper, so he'll hold up a little clock to show you the speakers how they're doing with time, because we want to be able to move through all the speakers. Nancy Newkirk is on the Board of Education for Sunnyvale School District. That's her there waving. Aaliyah Wilson is our communications coordinator. Lori Van Gogh is our chief financial officer. Dr. Tasha Dean is the assistant superintendent for student services and special education. Jeff Arnett is another one of our Board of Education members. Jeremy Nishihara is assistant superintendent of human resources and information systems. And Rob Smiley is our chief operations officer. And I should say that we only have two of our Board of Education members in this particular meeting. We had a different two in the first one. And that's just out of abundance of caution regarding the Brown Act, which covers open meetings and the rules for that in the state of California. In case there's any discussion among the board members, we can only have two in a meeting at a time. You can't have a majority of the board. So that's why there's just two. But this meeting is being recorded, which would give you and other members of the community an opportunity to view what occurs here, and also the other board members. So with that, I'm going to get started. I'm going to share my screen and I'll start the presentation. I'm going to try not to go too long so I can allow you to ask questions if you have them. And let's see here. Okay, so is the PowerPoint up and showing for everyone? Yes. Okay. So just briefly to go over today's agenda, we're going to do an overview of our planning to date. We're going to just do some brief highlights from surveys that we've done. And certainly you can ask questions about that if you want. The two people who conducted the surveys are here, Dr. Dean and Jeremy Nishihara. We're going to review county guidance and the state mandate. The state mandate is around providing the greatest possible, I forget the exact wording, greatest possible in-person instruction that is possible. So that's new. We'll provide a timeline as for moving through the summer and into August 19th, which is our scheduled first day with students. And then there'll be time for you to ask questions, share your experiences, and make comments. And I should say, if you happen to observe on Monday, and you're observing again today, or if you were a participant last Thursday, this is different because yesterday was a big day, as a day we were waiting for. It was the day that the County Office of Education and the County Department of Public Health jointly released guidelines for school openings. So that's really starting to move, well, actually all the districts in the county towards making decisions about what reopening school will look like. And I should say, while we need to adhere to that guidance and to the state mandate, we also need to do so while providing flexibility for our community. And that's a big portion of what our focus is going to be, that there's flexibility for families so that we can meet the needs of as many of our families as we possibly can. So we assembled a reopening task force, a really reopening leadership task force. And I want to say it was like late April, early May. And that group is essentially the people who are here in front of you that are parts of staff. So it's the superintendent, which is me, the assistant superintendents, the chief operations officer, chief financial officer, and Aaliyah Wilson, who's our communications coordinator. We've been working together and getting input from broader groups as we move in making preparations as we move through this period of time in anticipation of opening up again in August. So as I said a little bit ago, the focus of our planning is and will be and will continue to be based on the state and county guidance and emphasizing providing choice for families. And a couple of guiding principles really emerged, and I think these are really our guiding principles always, and that is safety. These terms take on new meaning, of course, in this environment, but safety is first, equity, flexibility, and high quality teaching and learning. So while 6 months ago we might have said those words and we'd have a relatively clear idea of what they meant, they sure mean different things now, and they all are heightened. I'd say our interest in each of them is heightened and focused in this time. And I can tell you that the first document that the county provided us listed health and wellness, operations, and teaching and learning as focus areas for districts to start their planning. And so our reopening task force, leadership task force, focused on those areas, and subcommittees were formed, and feedback was sought on all of those different areas. That's put us in a good position now as we move forward with our planning. So I'm going to go through each of those three areas, and I'm going to start with health and wellness. And the first bullet here, or actually the first two bullets, are ones that really came into clarity in the last few days. And the county guidance is for us to focus on stable cohorts at the elementary level. When I've asked the superintendent of schools for the county, Dr. Marianne Dewan, and others have asked her, like, well, what's the number? What's the right number for elementary school classes? Repeatedly, she said, and the county health department has said, the focus is stable cohorts. There's not a number. And this is really based on, and we can talk more about this in the questions, but this is really based on the science of how the virus spreads. Now, obviously with this, if there was a smaller number of students in a classroom, that's probably better. And so we have to weigh that with the resources that we have. But the concept here at the elementary schools is that it's better for students to be in a stable cohort, attending school every day, and not mixing with other students. So if there were 24 kids in a class, or let's say 20 or 24, and half of them at any one time are out of the classroom and their parents are sending them to daycare, then that's more contacts in the public. So that's the thinking that the health department and the county office have shared with us. And so that's why our focus, consistent with what the state mandate has given us about maximizing the in-person instruction for all kids, is our focus moving forward is really to see what we can do to make every effort to provide in-person instruction at the elementary level 5 days a week. And that's different than we might have said just a week ago, now that we have this clearer guidance, really a mandate from the state and guidance from the county office. The middle school focus is a little bit different, and they're weighing the differences in how they believe that the virus is contracted with the structure of middle school. And high school is similar, but we don't have high schools in our district. And the focus there is on social distancing within classrooms, and then in passing periods, and minimizing opportunities for kids to get in contact with each other, and wearing masks at all time. So there's some pretty specific guidelines around wearing masks at the elementary level. The understanding is the smaller the kids, the idea is like we should encourage them to wear masks all the time, but when they're in their desks, maybe when they're doing phonics instruction, maybe at that time they could remove their masks, but anytime they get up to move around, they should wear their masks. So all of this information can be found in some documents that were included as part of a letter that was distributed to the community just this afternoon. You may not have seen it yet if it came in your email. It was sent out just around 5 o'clock. So we can talk more about that. At the middle school level, what we're going to be pursuing is a hybrid model. So again, the state says we need to maximize in-person instruction as much as we can. At the middle school level, it's just not possible, as I see it, to have all the kids at, say, Sunnyvale Middle School, some 1,200 of them, on campus at the same time, and to meet the guidelines. So we'll be working on developing a hybrid model that has the kids on campus a couple of the days and off campus a couple of days, and receiving their instruction through distance learning on the days that they're not home, or they're not at school. Or perhaps on the days they are at school, the teachers provide them with instructions on what to do that they're not, and then the second cohort comes in. We haven't developed all the plans for what the hybrid would look like at the middle school, but that's generally the idea, to have fewer kids on campus, fewer interaction between students, and still to maximize in-person instruction as best we can, given the limitations. In both of these cases, there's understanding that some students, it just won't be appropriate for them to come to school, either because of their underlying health conditions of people that they're living with, or perhaps other factors. And that's accounted for in the guidance that we've received. And so we will provide alternatives, actually prioritize alternatives to in-person instruction for those students with those families. And we know from the input that we've received from in these previous 2 community forums, from the surveys that we've done, and from every other interaction we've had with the public, that we need to provide other alternatives as well to serve the needs of our community. So we do plan to have, to the greatest extent that we are able, with the resources that we have, we plan to have alternatives of distance learning for other students too. So moving through health and wellness, personal protective equipment, we've been working hard to secure personal protective equipment for staff, some for kids as well. The idea is that we're expecting that families would provide face coverings for their own kids, but we understand that kids being kids, they won't always have them. So we'll have backups for them. Face shields have been, actually a good number of them have been provided by the state to us. What we're learning about face shields, which are those plastic clear coverings that you see, is they're really not sufficient by themselves. They might be useful for a teacher providing instruction. I keep going back to, phonics or teacher teaching reading at the primary level. That's the idea that's in my head right now. But only briefly. They are really best used in conjunction with an actual face covering. That's how they're used in the medical setting. So we're also collecting hand sanitizer and working on procuring and installing sneeze guards. Sneeze guards are as the plexiglass shields that you see when you go to the grocery store or into offices that really protect the workers who are coming into contact with multiple people every day on one after another, and then also protects the public too, by protecting a barrier. So we're providing those too, and those will start showing up in offices and throughout the district. We've worked, I think, compared to most districts, we did really well on device distribution in this spring, and so we've collected them back. We're inventorying them. We're making sure that they're of the quality that we need, and we plan to be ready to redistribute them in August. Part of this is even if we're doing a substantial amount of in-person instruction 5 days a week, we need to be ready for a sudden shutdown, either of one classroom or of a grade level or of a school or perhaps even the whole district. So we've learned from what we did before. I think we did fairly well, but hopefully if any of those occurrences need to happen because of the situation, we'll be ready to do it even better again. We're working really hard on protocols for health screenings consistent with the County Department of Health guidance. Our nurses, we have 3 district nurses who are working on that, and that will be an important communication for employees and for families to keep everyone safe. So the days when, like, oh, my child isn't feeling too well, let's see how it goes at school, we can't do that. We just can't do that this year because that's just too risky. So we'll have protocols in place for that to help everyone, and what to do if a student appears ill or a staff member appears ill, like on the job, how to react. Or also the health department has provided us with guidances if there is a positive case, how do we respond to that within the fixed cohort, perhaps at the elementary level. If there's an exposure to from one of the persons in the cohort has experienced an exposure, we have now guidance from the county on how to respond to that occurrence as well. Social emotional learning is an important aspect of our district program, and I think we're pretty well positioned, again, compared to most other districts, and how we'll be able to provide social emotional learning skills in every classroom. We also have a good, actually a great cadre of social workers, counseling interns, and outside agencies that provide mental health services and social emotional supports to students and families. And they can do that, of course, in person safely under the new guidance, and also they can do it remotely as well. And they were doing that throughout the spring. Importantly, our social workers are to be applauded, along with others who did a Herculean job. When we shut down in the spring, there were many families who we immediately realized we just couldn't reach or weren't participating in distance learning. They worked really hard with other staff to reach out to them, to identify what the barriers were, and to do what they could to bring them back into and to get some value from the distance learning. Again, more information about masks. Some staff are in jobs, especially in special education, that involve very close one-to-one services with students. And so we're going to work with the guidance to make sure that those employees and those students are safe. And our social workers, again, have a big job in our district. They're reviewing our district crisis plan. In the case of operations, this is Mr. Smiley's area, and he and his team are working on looking at classroom furniture, including the placement of furniture to maximize the available space in every classroom for distance between students and distance between the teacher and the students. As I mentioned before, cohort stability will be a key. So we will be working with principals on rotating schedules for recess, access to playgrounds, locker rooms at the middle school level, and libraries. We're going to need to look at the student and staff traffic flow around school campuses. Guidance from the county says, to the extent possible, have kids entering at multiple entry points, and we need to do that safely, but to minimize contact with one another. One of the things that we're considering is maybe having staggered start times. So, for example, if there was a school that had 4 second grade classrooms at that school, maybe 2 of them would enter at one time and 2 of them would enter a little bit later, so there's not as many kids coming on school at the same time and not as many kids leaving at the same time as well. So we are continuing to explore childcare options for employees so that just to remove one of the barriers, of course it doesn't remove all of them, but one of the barriers for our workforce being able to report to work. And as I mentioned, protocols for class and or school closures and reopening are being reviewed from an operations standpoint. That includes cleaning of classrooms. That's a big one for the operations piece, how they would go about that so that we can get the kids and the staff back on campus as quickly as safely appropriate and possible. School lunch program is an important factor. We need to make sure that the delivery of that program is safe and orderly. And then we also, for the significant portion of our population that we expect to be participating in distance learning, we want to determine ways to make sure that they receive their meals as well. And then one of the areas that I'm really proud of Rob and his team for really thinking of before other districts is they've already begun to replace all of our filters in our heating and ventilation and air conditioning systems with hospital grade filters that are intended to filter out viruses and bacteria like COVID-19. So these are the same types of filters that are used at the hospital level. In terms of teaching and learning, a considerable amount of professional development is taking place, and teachers are, our teachers are always wonderful and they're always eager to improve themselves. But this year, more than ever, we have high signups for professional development, and we're put together plans for that focused on the reopening. We also are operating a summer school program all through distance learning that is helping us to really field test a bunch of different practices and applications so that students who do participate in distance learning in the fall or in August will have the best possible instruction, and also so that should a class or a school need to move into distance learning that was formerly in-person learning, that we'd be ready to go with that. During the first 2 weeks of school, there'll be a focus on building classroom community, establishing online learning norms. And this is even if the classes are in person, because we're trying to be proactive in anticipating what might happen, and so that kids and teachers are ready to go. You know, when we think back to March 13th, which was the day that we found out that schools would be closing, we had very little notice. Now we do. We know that it might happen. There's a good chance that even classrooms that are meeting in person may need to close again. So we're going to do our best we can to be ready for that. We really want to, there's a bullet here about focusing on kids in special education classes, really kids in any special population. We want to focus on them and their needs to make sure that their educational needs are met. And that is certainly true of special education students. We want to provide workshops for parents so that they can know how to most effectively use the tech tools. That's something we've heard in our reopening advisory committee, and then also through the input meetings and through the surveys. Another comment that we've received pretty regularly is that to provide some guidance for parents on how to talk to their kids when they return to school in August about school looking differently than it did when they left in March, because the flow of the school day is going to be different, the norms are going to be different, the classroom setups are going to be different. So preparing students for that, so preparing parents to prepare their students for that. And then the last bullet on this is that we have a good, strong cadre of coaches, instructional coaches, and they will be providing monthly coaching sessions on SEL to one another and to teachers, so that that aspect of our instructional focus is well supported. So now I'm going to move to the survey highlights. And as I mentioned, Tasha and Jeremy can answer some of these questions. As you look at the staff and the student survey responses, there are some real commonalities. And they include that whether it's kids learning from home or teachers teaching from home, was a challenge for both. And I don't have to explain that to anyone who went through it. It's a challenging situation. It's not ideal. In the case of staff, we've said that our foundation is to do what we can to bring staff back to school, back to their classrooms, and then to build on that. So we're confident that we can do that safely. And then it's a matter of introducing the students to the classroom in a safe way too, in accordance with the guidance that we've been receiving. Staff reported challenges with connecting with some students and parents, and even when they connected with some of them with distance learning, while our staff did a fantastic job, and there's some wonderful examples of teaching and learning through distance, it's just not the same as a teacher walking up to a student and helping them with his or her math facts. You just can't do as much in distance as you can in person. It's harder to maintain student attention, although we're learning that teachers can do it better and better than we imagined. There are inequitable learning environments for students who are at home. It's a challenge assessing student progress, and it's difficult to build relationships with new students, especially if you've never met them before in person. And so from the student family side, again, many of the same things: lack of social interaction for their students, lack of consistency of instruction, which makes sense. As much as our teachers did a great job, it was all new to everyone. And some of them raced ahead and some of them progressed steadily, but at a different pace. And so what we're going to try to do is help all of our teachers and all of our students experience a strong, consistent instructional program. The distribution of devices, I mentioned that. And a big thing, the state started out when they started talking about distance learning saying that it needed to be ungraded, and they really focused on like less assessment. But now we know that this could be the condition for the better part or all of the coming school year. We need to track and provide student assessment data. And students and families ask for more support and clearer expectations. So that's the feedback that we've gotten. In terms of being ready to report to school, these are some quick snapshots based on the family surveys. You can see for the in-person school, a large percentage of families said that that's what they preferred. And the way I like to look at this isn't a vote where that wins and the students and the families who for legitimate medical reasons or for reasons of family members or whatever the condition, that they lose. We're trying not to have winners and losers. So there's a significant portion of the population that is not ready for in-person school. So that's why a big part of our plan will be to provide options for those families, with prioritizing, of course, those who have the medical needs or the family needs. There also was some support for hybrid instruction and distance learning. Well, you can see that the stronger support is for in-person, although it's a credit to our teachers and the quality of their instruction, how high the hybrid instruction scores and the distance learning scores are, I think, in these surveys. And so now the timeline. So I left June 30th, which was yesterday, on the timeline because that was such a big day. It really was the day that the state gave us direction on where to go. And again, the state requirement is that we pursue in-person instruction to the greatest extent possible. And so that means we are compelled, and through audits and everything else, to demonstrate that we've attempted that. And so that's why we're going to be pursuing 5 days a week of in-person instruction for as many students as feel that that's appropriate. And we know there's a lot of staff members who it won't be appropriate for them to come to school. And so we're gonna prioritize them in working with us to see what we can do to make those two things go together. If there's staff who, for whatever reason, can't provide in-person instruction, let's see if they can provide the distance learning to accommodate that other flexibility that we have. So moving forward, tomorrow, our Reopening Advisory Committee, which has already met twice, and they're meeting every 2 weeks, they will meet again. That's a group of 30 people made up of teachers, parents, principals, staff, and tomorrow they'll be looking at the county's reopening guidance and giving us feedback on that. July 8th is another important date. That's next Wednesday. The Board of Education will be meeting. District team will be presenting them with some proposals on reopening. And it's basically what I've been discussing right here. The idea of, for elementary school, 5 days of in-person instruction, options for families and for staff to provide distance learning, and to the greatest extent that we possibly can. And then for middle school, developing hybrid models with options for distance learning as well. By mid-July, this has to happen all very fast. By mid-July, we need to make a final decision because we need to start communicating with the community, communicating with staff, finding out who has limitations, who has preferences, and starting to match that up to put together our program for August 19th, which is the first day of school. And with that, that's my presentation. I know I went through that kind of fast, and if there's questions or comments, the floor is yours, and Aaliyah will be calling on you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Gallagher. So now, if you guys can if you wanted to speak, please use the raise the hand feature. So if you go to attendees next to your name, you should be able to raise your hand there. And I'll just go ahead, and I receive them in the order that they're received. So I'll go ahead and start at the top and work my way to the bottom. As we said earlier, if you can try to keep the limit to about 2 minutes, that would be great, just to help get through everyone. But first, the first person that has the floor is Wendy Smith.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, good evening. My name is Wendy Smith, and as most of you know, not only am I a third grade teacher here in Sunnyvale, but I also serve as the president of the Sunnyvale Education Association, which of course is the teachers union. For a while now, the collaboration between the district and the union has been something we are all very proud of and have found great benefit in. We, as a team, have worked hard to solve some very challenging issues. We have prided ourselves on being creative thinkers and thinking outside of the box. While we have some very crucial things in common, there is one area that we differ in. We differ in perspective. You see, we as teachers come from the perspective of being in person and on the front lines. Whatever decision you make as a district directly affects us. Nothing made this difference more clear than at Monday's forum, when Dr. Gallagher mentioned the sneeze guards that have been put up in the stores and to, and I quote, protect the customer from the cashier. Immediately I was taken back because I didn't see it that way. I have always seen it as it was to protect the cashier from the many customers that come through. You see, I see the cashier in this situation as being the stable one, the one that for the most part remains the same. However, each day they are faced with many different customers, and even the sheer volume of customers changes. This showed me that while we have the same end goal of what's best for students, our perspectives are different. I'm asking you tonight to consider that perspective. Consider the perspective of the people that will be there in person working with students, the people who will actually be the ones to risk so much, including possible health exposure. When we open our classroom to students, we are opening to everything that their family members have been exposed to, every parent's work environment, every party, every family barbecue. This is then multiplied by each of our students. Middle school teachers have 150 plus students. The risk is crazy. Unless you are a teacher, you might not see this. We have been told that the risk is somehow less because children don't seem to be the ones most likely to catch COVID-19. Of course, this is and has been an assumption, still not supported by concrete facts. If the district chooses to operate on this assumption, then why not operate on the assumption, that children don't seem to be the ones coming down with COVID-19 because they are more asymptomatic, or maybe because they are carrying it. In fact, it was reported on the news today that children can spread COVID-19 as easy as adults. Truth be told, however, we as teachers would prefer not to operate on any assumptions. We've also been told it's not about class size, but what we can do safely. Have you been in a real classroom? Many classrooms are wall-to-wall desks. It might not be about class size, but then it sure as heck has to be about classroom size. In light of what we consider to be careless guidelines released by the county yesterday, especially after being made aware of the more than 40 school principals here in the South Bay at our neighbor district, Santa Clara, having to quarantine after being exposed to COVID-19 in a meeting, we ask you to support our reputation of being creative thinkers and think outside the box. We ask you to not only consider the protection of our most valuable resources, our students, but please keep the protection of the people directly interacting with them at the forefront of your decisions. We have shared with the district an MOU that we feel is very important in protecting the lives of educators, their families, while at the same time supporting students. We look forward to working through the MOU with integrity. However, as we attend these forums online and participate in online meetings for reopening schools, maybe we should really be asking ourselves the obvious. If the meetings to reopen schools are all taking place via Zoom for the safety of participants, maybe you shouldn't be discussing reopening schools. If you as decision makers are not willing to come sit in an elementary classroom of 24 to 32 students or a middle school classroom with 150 plus students coming through for 6 hours a day because of the risk it puts you in, then how can you consciously ask a teacher to do that? Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Our next speaker is Colleen Lynch Espinoza.
Hello, everybody. I'm Colleen, and I'm an instructional coach at San Miguel Elementary School. Thank you for giving me some time to speak. I would like to speak on, first of all, thank everyone for giving us this opportunity to speak. Since I wasn't able to get on the original meeting, I'm very grateful that these forums are being held. I wanted to speak to an issue that was brought up at the meeting that I watched on a recording about the translations for these meetings. I know that the timeline is quick and short, but this is our third one, and I could be unaware, but I don't know if translation's occurring for this, so I'm at least hoping that, I know these are being recorded, and I'm hoping that they can be voiced over in languages so that all of our families can have access to the conversations. I think it's really important that since not as many families in the district were able to respond to the survey, that we get creative, as Dr. Gallagher said at the beginning, to make sure that we hear as many voices as possible, whether that be printing out paper surveys or printing out paper information about what's been discussed in these last few weeks, so that all families have access to this information and can be up to date with what's going on in the district and have an opportunity to have their voices heard. I just want to make sure that we are going to continue to reach out as this process continues to all of our families and ensure that they have access to the information and are approached in a way where they feel comfortable, they feel valued, and they feel heard. Thank you.
Thanks, Colleen. And if I could just interject, the topic of translation for meetings is one that has emerged through these meetings, which is great. You know, we've never had nearly this amount of participation in a meeting, so we really appreciate that. I don't know that we've ever had, at least in the 11 years I've been in the district, that we've ever had translation of board meetings. But Nancy's nodding. I don't know if that means yes or no. We did once. Okay. But we have discovered that the new version of Zoom that we procured Monday allows for another channel for translation that's set up for that. We haven't worked out all the bugs, but that is something that we are pursuing and we'd like to be able to do. I don't know how quickly we can pull that together, but that is something that's on our mind, because we absolutely agree. We'd like to be able to provide translation at meetings, especially big community meetings like this one. So thanks for that thought, Colleen.
Next up is Sophia Lai.
Hi, my name is Sophia Lee. Good evening. My name is Sophia Lee, and I am a language arts and reading intervention teacher at Columbia Middle School. First of all, I'd like to say that I respect and appreciate the district's commitment to students' social and emotional well-being. It has clearly been a priority in the planning process so far, and I agree that those are important services to provide to our student population. Overall, this has been a challenging time for many people's mental and emotional health. When schools closed suddenly this spring, teachers and students alike felt anxious about the uncertainty that governed our lives. We felt isolated and disconnected, interacting with our school community through a screen instead of in person. However, based on my personal and professional experiences, I believe that a return to in-person learning would be detrimental to staff and students' mental and emotional health, rather than beneficial. Although we would be able to see one another in person, we would do so accompanied by the fear and anxiety of becoming infected with COVID-19. I personally feel worried and anxious about enforcing social distancing guidelines in the classroom. I believe that students will inevitably fail to follow them, and I am deeply fearful about the consequences of that for our entire community. Moreover, physical and emotional safety are necessary for learning. They are foundational, in fact. In-person learning takes away from both. Consequently, I believe that the fear and anxiety that will come with in-person school will also hinder students' ability to learn in that setting. Furthermore, based on my experience of crisis learning this spring, I believe that it is possible to build and strengthen relationships between students and teachers remotely. Even though we were suddenly thrown into crisis learning, my colleagues at CMS and I played games with our students, hosted social clubs for students during lunch, and facilitated community circles for our students all over Zoom. It is absolutely not the same as being with one another in a physical classroom, but we are not choosing between distance learning and in-person school as we know it. We are choosing between distance learning and in-person school during a global pandemic. If teachers and students return to school campuses this fall, it will be a version of in-person school where students can't hug their friends or huddle over a video game together or fist bump or high five a teacher when they see them. It will be a version of in-person school robbed of many of the interactions that promote our connectedness. My students' social and emotional well-being during this time is deeply important to me as a teacher. Therefore, I ask you all to stand with me in urging the state and the county to revise its guidance on reopening schools, especially in light of the recent surge in COVID-19 cases. While it might seem unimaginable to not reopen schools, I know our district's teachers and school staff. We are creative, determined, and dedicated. We can design a distance learning experience that addresses students' social, emotional, and mental health needs while preserving students' physical health. I ask the board and the district to give us the opportunity, time, and support to do so. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sophia. Next up is Evie Elwood.
Hi, my name is Evie Elwood, and I'm a Science 8 and Sheltered Science teacher at Columbia Middle. I'll start by saying that I appreciate the district and the board for opening a forum and expanding that forum when it became clear that the Sunnyvale community needed their thoughts and concerns to be heard. With that said, I'm immediately concerned knowing that the district already has a preliminary reopening plan, considering that these forums are still in session. These forums are the only time I have felt as if the Sunnyvale teachers and staff have had an opportunity to share our thoughts about the upcoming school year. In these forums, a few slides were shown that included quotes from the student and parent surveys, all of which shared a singular sentiment about the challenges from what you were calling distance learning last year. There were no direct quotes from the staff survey administered at the end of the school year. The same staff survey did not ask which means of learning we would prefer next year as a staff. It simply asked whether we or our family had pre-existing health conditions. This makes me wonder whether the district actually intends to consider the voice of the staff in their decision-making process, or if our voice isn't equal to those in the other stakeholders in the district. If this is not your intent, I'm wondering at what point between now and the July 8th release of your reopening plan that you will ask for staff input. As a district with a focus on equity and socio-emotional health, I am saddened to say that the district has not met my expectations during this difficult time. I do not believe teachers and staff have been given the same voice as the other stakeholders in the decision-making process. and I'm concerned about what that will mean for our staff's willingness to return to work when the district inevitably shares a plan with the upcoming school year. Assuming this is my only opportunity to voice my thoughts about the upcoming school year, I would like to end by saying that I share the sentiment of other staff and parents in this and previous forums that returning to school in the fall is a choice that puts our lives at risk, which could easily be mitigated through distance learning. Thank you.
Thank you, Evie. Next up is Sharice Poston.
Hi, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hi. This is the third board forum meeting that I've been on. And I'm Sharice Poston, Columbia Middle School. I teach English Language Arts and ELD. So this is the third forum I've been on. And I have said this, and a lot of other people have said this, but like, people will die if we go back to school. And I just feel like that's not a risk that I'm willing to take. And I am really shocked that it's a risk that our district is willing to take. And I just wanted to reiterate that because it seems like it's been not heard. So I wanted to reiterate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharice. Next up is Dipali Suri.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, well, thanks everyone for the opportunity to attend and speak at these forums. I absolutely share the sentiments of each and every one of the speakers you just heard. So I don't know what survey are we talking about here, but every single, and I've attended this forum once more a couple of days back, every single or 90% of the people you heard at that forum were very clear about not being comfortable going back to school. You're exactly hearing the same sentiment today. I'm actually ashamed and appalled at the decision that the county and the state took. It seems like people are working in bubbles here. Governor Newsom, look at the numbers that are rising in California. You're talking about life and death situation here. We all understand, appreciate the quality of education, et cetera, but I think I said the same thing last time. I'll repeat it again. How can you compare anything when given two things in perspective with the life and death situation that anyone and everyone can face? Not just the students with underlying health conditions, not just any family members with underlying health conditions. Can the district guarantee that no life will be lost if a particular student takes COVID back home, even if their parents did not have pre-existing condition? How can a district make sure when, let's say, an elementary grade student carries COVID back home, and in a situation like mine, I have a 2-year-old to take care of. What if me and my husband fall sick? Who is going to take care of our 2-year-old? You're putting huge risk on families' part. And between last forum and today, I'm also very shocked to see that the tonality of the messages completely changed from not supporting the community to just going and abiding or trying to abide by what the county said. I appreciate that and I respect that, but at the same time, you're also hearing the community very loud and clear. Numbers are going up like crazy in our state, in our district, in our county. Today is the very first day in the history of COVID that we had the highest number of cases in Santa Clara County in one single day. And this is not just because of increased testing, like Governor has said. This is because of the increased exposure, all sorts of family parties, etc. People not, abiding by social distancing rules, etc. I can't even imagine 20 or 24 or even 10 elementary school kids, being able to even comprehend following any social distancing measures. I mean, how can you, have those kids not even accidentally, kind of not see each other within 6 feet, etc. I think we all have said it multiple times. I don't know how much more do we need to say that we are absolutely not comfortable sending our kids to school till we have a vaccine for this condition. We're not absolutely ready to take our own lives at risk. Like someone said here, you guys are yourself doing this meeting through Zoom. Give us an example of meeting in person. I'm not going to office because I don't feel comfortable and my office staff is respecting that. How can anybody be, forced to go to school at this point? And please, I would like you to elaborate on the maximum extent possible of distance learning. What does that mean? I mean, is every family going to be given a choice to send their kids to school or not? That would be my question to you.
So I would say that the interpretation of the state mandate that I've received is that every district is required to pursue in-person instruction to the greatest extent possible. So that means if there's a physical way of doing it, that we should pursue it. Now in our district, I don't know what other districts are going to do, how they're going to interpret that. But for me, I think it's really important that we provide alternatives, because it's clear from this meeting and from others that while our initial survey said many parents were ready to send their kids to school, many are not also. So in our district, I'm committed to, and we're committed to developing alternatives for families to the in-person instruction.
Thank you. Next up is Lupe Escarino.
Hi, this is Lupe Escareno. I am a parent, and my son goes to San Miguel Elementary School. I just wanted to reiterate what everybody else said. I am a little concerned about my son going back in person, and especially for the teachers as well. It sounds like most of them are going to be uncomfortable going back, and I completely understand. And it's a bad environment out there. I mean, there's been a lot of parents that I've reached out to, and I hear their concerns and everything. As a working parent, will there be alternatives to where, like, let's just say we do decide to do distance learning, which everybody's, kind of leaning towards. I'm going to be like an 8 to 5 person. With the distance learning, is it flexible to where a parent can, show like videos and stuff of this teacher teaching after 5 o'clock, or what's going to be that balance if that's the choice? That's my number one question. And then the other question is what I heard from the presentation is that, I guess if the kids go to a daycare and then go to school, of course, it's going to be more exposure. So for us working parents, it's going to be very hard, for our kids going back to the fall and not being able to access, that daycare after, because what San Miguel offers is a KLAS program after school, which is going to be the same kids. I mean, they're going to be interacting with the same kids, but mixed groups. So is that even possible is the other question.
I can answer the question about the daycare. Well, actually, I can't. The answer is I don't really know. That's a question that came up with Dr. Dewan, the county superintendent, and the county health department just yesterday. Like, what about parents who need daycare after school? And they said that they'd be developing some sort of guidance for those situations as well. So I'm with you. I don't really know what the answer is to that particular question. And to the first part, if you're a 9 to 5, if you're working 9 to 5 or, all day while your child would be in school, but they're doing distance learning, I imagine it would be similar to, well, it would depend on the teacher. It would be similar to what the experience was this past spring.
Next up is Melissa Fisher.
Hi, thank you so much for having these forums. I'm a parent of a 2nd grader at Ellis and an incoming 6th grader at SMS. The part that's kind of been frustratingly overlooked over the last couple of meetings, I've been at all 3, is the weight that's being put into the parent survey. This survey was done a month ago. The situation surrounding the pandemic has changed a lot in the last month. And I don't even remember what I put on that survey, to be completely honest. I might have said, hey, hybrid sounds good. And with the worsening conditions, I feel very differently right now. I have to say I was a little disappointed because I was really hoping that that would be taken into account. When Dr. Gallagher was saying that word was coming from the state June 30th, I kept thinking, well, they'll definitely take into account the current state of the pandemic. Everybody else is. My doctor's not allowing me to go in for standard blood work because Kaiser is saying that it's too risky right now with the current spike. So again, we're seeing every other area of our lives taking this into account except for our kids' school. And so that's the frustrating part on my side. Thank you again very, very much for having these forums.
Thank you, Melissa. Next up is Chandru Vital Babu.
Oh, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
I just wanted to start by saying congratulations to Dr. Gallagher being our new superintendent. I think in the first 12 hours of your job, you've done probably more than most superintendents have done in 12 years.
Thank you, Chandru.
Of course. Thank you as well for having these forums. I feel like it's great having this personal interaction with our leaders. So thank you. It's really appreciated. I am a speech language pathologist at Vargas Elementary School. And while I was very happy to see that you have been discussing special education, but I have some questions which I would really appreciate any answers from. So my caseload is about 50 students, and there's about 2 speech pathologists or 1, depending on the year at Vargas School. So that means that I see kids from pretty much every grade level. And since we are looking at stable cohorts, I see no way of maintaining a stable cohort as a speech language pathologist. Even the before time, when we were in person learning, I would go sometimes to a 5th grade classroom, work with them, and then take kids from a 5th grade, 4th grade, 3rd grade, depending on what their grade levels are, in the same group. And then immediately after they are done with their session, go and see a kindergarten classroom. So because of this, I am wondering, how is it possible to maintain stable cohorts when I, as well as all the other related services providers, such as occupational therapists and research specialists, will be working with students from the entire school body? My other question is, I have heard, and from what you have said, that we are looking at potentially closing down certain areas of schools that might have outbreaks. Like, for example, if one classroom. Would related service providers be included in that shutdown? Because I would say statistically, it is likely that I and other related service providers would be seeing students in that classroom if it's affected, which would mean that we would be exposed and potentially would be exposing the entire school. As much as we like it, I just do not see how a school environment could be a hermetically sealed bubble where each classroom only interacts with each classroom. And the last thing I'd like to say is I do appreciate how much you are, all the administration is looking at and taking our feedback, but I do invite, if we do go into in-person learning, I do invite any of the administrators to come and work at the schools for a day and see how it is possible. I mean, after all, if you would like us staff members to risk any exposure to COVID, I believe that the administrators should be willing to do that themselves. Thank you very much.
I won't respond in depth, but the issues that you raised are issues that we're taking into consideration. And I think the very important thing for you to think about is we're not coming back to school the same way we left. And it's really important to understand that. So how our service delivery looked before, it can no longer look that way given the details that we know today and the ones that may come in the future. So I guess that would be the first and most important thing that you or any service provider will need to think about, and we will be shaping and designing based upon the input that we get. But when you return, it definitely will not look the same. So just as we're going to need to educate students who may be returning, we will also need to have communication and ongoing communication as teams, because it'll look different for us as well.
Thank you, Dr. Dean. Next is Jesse Weinstock.
Hi, thank you. And thanks to the board for having this meeting. Can y'all hear me? Cool. I'm Jesse Weinstock. I'm a science and social studies teacher at Columbia Middle School. I had a question for the board regarding the recommendations released by the county yesterday. I'm looking at section 4 where it mentions distance remote learning for particular students. I'm going to quote it. Regardless of on-site conditions, distance remote learning should be made available to the following students. Students who are medically fragile or would be or would be put at risk by in-person instruction. Whose job is it to determine who is at risk and who is not at risk at this point when medical data is, we'll be nice and call it incomplete? Who's be for that distinction to be made?
I was looking to see if someone's going to take that. I guess I'll give it a shot. Jesse, that's a good question. You know, I'm not a medical doctor, but we don't have any medical doctors on the panel. So we have to rely on the classifications of that are provided to us by the county health department and by a child's individual physician. I mean, that's how that would be evaluated.
And so the same question would go, I guess, for staff. How will it be determined who is at risk and who is not at risk? And I'm just going to emphasize this piece, when medical data, and this is wording directly from the county's recommendations, when medical data is incomplete.
So Jeremy, I think, do you want to talk a little bit about the process that you're going to go through for that for staff?
Yes, I think, Jesse, the guidance we're following is from the CDC has outlined, and this was in one of the questions that was included in the staff survey back in June, was outlining some of the potential conditions for at-risk staff members. And so that included over 65 or underlying health conditions as outlined by the CDC website. And we had that link there. So I think it's a little bit more of an art in this sense, because it is individualized. Health is individualized. So that's the guidance we would be using as kind of the starting point. So we have some data on that from our staff survey. And again, knowing that we got about 72% of teachers to respond. When we go back, as we go back into the fall, we are going to obviously contact each individual staff member once we know the conditions that we're opening in with the options that we're offering, and then try to go from there. I think that's the best answer I can give you at the moment. So.
I appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Yep.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Jesse. Next up is Priyanka Bhatt. If you can go ahead and unmute yourself, Priyanka, you should be set to speak.
Actually, this is, I'm Prathit Trivedi. This is my wife's computer, so that's her name is appearing. So, so I am a parent, and my son will be joining elementary school. So actually, I think I agree with most of the teachers who are concerned about in-class attending for the students. So I really appreciate if there is option for all the kids, regardless of their condition or home condition or health condition. If everyone gets option to get the remote learning, that would be the best thing for all the kids and also for the teacher. Okay, that's it. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And if I could just point out here, we have about 15 people with their hands raised up through Agnes. And we were going to try to end right around 8:30. That's not a hard stop, but that's our target. So that tells me if everyone really keeps their comments to 2 minutes, we should be able to get through all the people through Agnes.
Yeah, and if you just want to say I support things that were already said, that helps as well. Thank you. So next up is Michelle Koo.
Hi, good evening. I'm a middle school math teacher at Columbia Middle School. I want to thank you for providing this forum. One thing that I have not heard brought up is what is the plan to ensure all our students have internet access? Many of our families signed up for Comcast's free internet offer, but that was for 2 months. Come August, that will expire. And knowing that many families have had changes in job situations and their income, I want to make sure we're prepared to support these families. When we were getting hotspots, there was quite a significant delay from when we shut down to when we were able to provide them to students. So I want to make sure that's being taken into account, whether it's providing hotspots or paying for home internet. And then my second point that I wanted to make is I know the district is focused on socio-emotional learning. However, as a teacher in a previous school that I worked at, I had both a student and a teacher pass away during the same year. That will also have a significant impact on our students if something like that were to occur. So the short-term gain of them seeing friends, I think we also need to weigh that against the possibility of someone in their class, someone in their family becoming sick. So not just the short-term socio-emotional boost. Thank you so much for your time.
And then Michelle, I'll just jump in. Thank you for your comments and addressing the first part of it. Yes, when everyone shut down, you can imagine all 1,000 districts in California were scrambling for hotspots. So we were fortunate to kind of get in. It may not seem like it, but more on the front of the line. We have our stock we were able to recover, and we're making sure they're all still in working order and are deploying those from the get-go on day one. So we are making sure that those are in place. In addition, in conversations with vendors to scale that up if needed as we learn more information and keep our parents informed about the conditions and what we're opening, be it in person or distance or hybrid or XYZ. So.
And to add to what Jeremy said, we were able to satisfy all of the requests that we received for hotspots with the allotment that we did get. However, it did take a couple weeks to procure them, but we were able to satisfy all the requests that we received.
Thank you both. Next up is David Cohen.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, thanks. I'm David Cohen. I'm a parent. I've raised 4 kids in the Sunnyvale school system. 2 are still in high school and 1 is still at SMS. I appreciate the difficult challenge the administration is facing with the COVID situation and trying to do what is best academically for the kids. I also appreciate that you recognize that distance learning cannot be a substitute for in-person learning. Far too much is lost, as the survey affirmed, and it's exactly also consistent with my experience as a parent. I'm very glad to see that the goal is to have as much in-person learning and instruction as possible. I want to say that as a parent, I feel completely comfortable sending my kids back to school this fall. I don't think we can wait for a vaccine, which may actually never come. I'm concerned about the guidance of having middle school kids wearing masks at all times. I understand we want to be safe. I want us to be safe. I just worry that that could greatly inhibit the important social aspects of in-person schooling. So maybe that's something that you have masks requirement right away, but maybe that gets relaxed over time. I understand the issue. I just don't want to, I want our kids to be able to have good social experience in school. And of course, as mentioned, teachers and staff will wear masks. And I also want to point out some guidance this week from the American Academy of Pediatrics. That's this week, not old guidance, that they're urging officials to reopen schools this fall, allow children to be physically present in the classroom. And the president, Dr. Zaragoza, said, even after weighing what we know about children and coronavirus, we strongly advocate the goal should be to have students physically present in the school. And she goes on to say that children learn more in school, as we all know, than just reading, writing, and arithmetic, and went on to talk about how long-term at-home learning can affect children's social and emotional skills, diet, exercise, mental health support, and other things that just can't be provided online. And that is exactly consistent with my experience as a parent. So again, I back and continue to encourage in-person learning as much as possible. That said, hearing what some other parents said, I also have the opinion that if some parents are afraid of sending their kids back to school with in-person learning for any reason, maybe their kid has a medical condition or just simply they're afraid, I think this district should in fact make accommodations for those families and students for distance learning. I'm certainly all in favor of options. So that's it. I'll keep it brief. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it. Next up is Anandi.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hi. My name is Anandi, and I have a second grader who will come through the Sunnyvale Elementary School. I have 4 questions. First of all, thank you very much for providing these sessions. I think I've learned a lot from the board strategy, and I've seen how it evolved from Monday's presentation to today's based on the county guidelines. So my first question is, you mentioned for the elementary school, there will be the in-person classes and you want to maintain the stable cohort. So the parents who choose that option, would we have to send all our kids to all 5 days, or would there be an option to send them, say, for 2 days a week or 3 days a week, and then choose to have the distance learning option for the remaining days? And secondly, I think it was very clear from today's and last time's presentation that the distance learning plan will be much improved compared to what it was for the last school year. And so I wonder, would you show us, or would you give us an idea or a snapshot of what this improved plan really will be? Because I think that's really important for the parents who are really looking forward to keeping the kids at home and having the distance learning, but at the same time make sure that the kids are really getting the best out of it. So if you can share that whenever you finalize the plan, I think the parents will really appreciate that. And my next questions are regarding the teachers. I mean, I do appreciate their concerns, and I've heard this today and also on Monday, and they're all justifiable. I mean, they are not really the medical workers, they are the teachers who chose to educate our kids, and I really am thankful to them. But now that, possibly we are asking them to come in person at school, I wonder, first of all, is there a plan to test the teachers if they currently have the coronavirus infection? So say in future, unfortunately, our teachers
Nandi,
develop
I can answer that one. So
Okay.
we had a conversation with El Camino Hospital earlier this week, and it looks like we're going to be able to have testing of our staff. They're going to provide that at no cost. Then I want to answer your first question before I forget it. The first question about, if a student was participating in the 5 days a week instruction, it would be, well, the instruction wouldn't be exactly like, before March 13th, but it would be, you would need to be in class every day because of the teacher would be counting on the students to attend every day, and there'd be a regular daily flow of instruction.
And how long would that be? Can you elaborate on that?
It would be, I think we may have a little bit of flexibility with that, but the initial thought is that it would be a regular school day.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Anandi. Next up is Jill Borges.
And I'm pretty sure we're not going to be able to get through, I don't know if we're going to be able to get through all of the people who are raising their hands. So the last one now is Robin Cherry. We promised to get through Agnes. We'll do the best we can.
Okay. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So my name's Jill Borges, and I have a daughter at SMS, and I have 2 kids at Cumberland, and I'm also a teacher in the Fremont Union High School District. And I'm going to kind of take the opposite view of everybody. I highly, highly, highly want the kids in school. I don't think that there's any sort of anything that can substitute in-class learning. And childcare is a problem. Trying to teach my own kids and run my own classes at home was not successful in any way for my own kids. My students, okay, but my kids had a very difficult time. One of my daughters has ADHD, and the lack of social interactions that she has is, she's every day, it's crying every day. And I'm gonna try not to get emotional, but I am willing to send my kid to school no matter what, and I'm willing to teach all the other kids no matter what. And I know a lot of other teachers feel differently. I think that childcare is an issue. If you have a lot of families who have two parents working, and if their kids are not at school, their kids are going to be at childcare. So whether they're at childcare or at school, what is the difference? Because not everyone has the opportunity to have their kid at home if they're not at school. So I think that for some parents to assume that their kids are safer at home, that's good for them, and they should be able to have the opportunity to do distance learning fully if they want that. But I also think that parents who are working full-time would rather their kids be learning in an actual school than sitting home by themselves learning minimal amount of work. And I know that some people are going to oppose that opinion, but I just want to let you guys know that I am in full support of schools opening. I hope that my school opens. I hope I can teach my kids in person, and I hope that my kids can go to school. And if that is the option that they're given, I will most for sure take that. Thank you guys.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you for everything you're doing. Next up is Guerrero.
Hello, can you hear us? Hi. Thanks for taking our question. I'm going to try and make mine less than a minute so my husband have a minute to talk. At the risk of sounding insensitive, I just want to ask the question frankly. But what are the teacher union rules? I'm a parent of 2 Cumberland kids, but what are the rules for like the teachers union? Because I'm hearing a lot of teachers saying they don't want to go back to school, which is totally understandable. But is there going to be a live teaching to the extent that they would have if they were standing in the classroom? Because I don't see why the amount of live teaching online should be different from the amount of live teaching in the classroom. I'm an essential worker. I've been given permission to work remotely from home, but during my 8.5 hours, I'm on the clock and I'm expected to pick up a patient call at the drop of a hat if an incoming call comes in. So I would expect that the teacher union would have the same kind of accountability that the teachers would have had on the clock. And here's my husband's question.
Actually, I don't have a question. I just wanted to acknowledge the fact that teachers are concerned about going to work. I'm an anesthesiologist, and my coworkers, they're concerned every day about catching COVID-19. So I know that the fear is real, but I'm an essential worker. I have to go. I have to be safe at work. And in some form or another, I consider teachers also essential workers because learning is not an option. And depending on parents to teach their kids subjects such as English, which frankly I'm not that great at, is not an option for me. I didn't go to graduate school to be a teacher. And I really want the teachers to do what they were trained and willing to do for their career.
And we say this because we love our Cumberland teachers a lot, not because we think that anybody's trying to get out of work. Also, will the meeting on July 8th be open to the public like these previous meetings? Thank you.
Yes, it most definitely will.
And I want to address your first question. I won't speak for the teachers union. I can tell you that we work very well and closely with the teachers union, as Wendy, or the first speaker, Wendy Smith, mentioned. She's the president of our teachers association. And we respected the work that they do. It can take 8 hours of work to be online for just an hour or a couple hours. I don't want to misstate that, but I just want to kind of speak on behalf of the teachers and understanding that when you're doing online teaching, it's not, there takes a bunch of time just to prepare for the time that you would be live. So I understand that. There are, in the state mandate, there are some requirements for the number of instructional minutes for online teaching, and I don't have that in front of me, but there are some requirements for that.
Thank you. Next up is Theodore Hong.
Hi, this is Theo Hong. I'm a parent of 2 children at Cumberland Elementary. I've been listening to all the sides of this debate, and I understand that there are a lot of benefits for kids being in school. But we also value our teachers a lot, and we want them to stay safe. And they're not medically trained, to be on the front lines the way some other folks are. But it is a balancing act, and I don't envy you the decisions that you're having to make. I just wanted to point out, it was mentioned earlier about the CDC at-risk guidance about the over 65 cutoff. This was actually recently updated to reflect the fact that there's not a hard cutoff, but that just risk generally increases with age. So this is something that is really individual and needs to be taken into account. Thank you.
Thank you. So next up is Leah Brunnings.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, yes, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for providing us this opportunity in a forum we can speak to the community and with the community. I teach at Cumberland, and I also have 2 children who attend Cumberland, so I come from a parent perspective as well as a teacher perspective. I echo a lot of my colleagues who fear for coming back to school. We signed up to teach, not to be risking our lives per se, but to help enrich minds. And there's a lot that goes to that. But I also know there are a lot of colleagues who feel very comfortable going back to the classroom. And I'm hoping we can think outside the box when we think of the parents who do want to send their kids and who are essential workers and need this for their children to be in a safe place 5 days a week, enriching their minds and provided with the social aspects that come with it. And maybe we can match up those who need to be at home or want to be at home with those who need to send their children or who do not want to send their children. And it would be a matter of choice, not just a medical decision based on risk. Because I think choice is going to be essential to making an imperfect solution as perfect as possible. I also hope that we think about the teachers when it comes to substitutes. I was reading through the 23-page document that was provided, and all the slew of scenarios that come into play when a symptom of COVID, which might not be COVID, comes into place and you're out of the classroom for at least 3 days. We had a hard time getting substitutes for 1 day. How will we provide substitutes in a stable cohort for these children when a teacher has to be out for 3+ more days? And we know there will be interruptions to learning, and we know that there's a very good possibility we go back to school and then we're out of school. So having systems in place that are set up prior so we're not having to do it in a reactive situation, where I know we are trying our best to be proactive, but the substitute situation is a big worry for me as a teacher. As a parent, I worry about the quick decisions we're going to have to make for our children to be out of the classroom. So as much as we can be having that already in place will be essential. And I appreciate that we're thinking about having multiple avenues for people to reach the learning that they need and that they feel is important for their family, and taking that into consideration. So thank you.
Okay, if we can try to keep the comments down to about a minute now, I think we can get through most of the people with their hands raised.
I just wanted to interject, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I just heard a few speakers, and I want to make sure that we stay on track here. Next week, when the board meets, we're meeting to review options. No decisions, no final decisions being made next week. And so there will still be opportunities to speak at that forum, but I am seriously asking, because I know it hasn't really been enforced in the last couple of meetings, that people keep their comments to 2 minutes. I also want to address another point. I'm in education, I'm a school administrator, and I understand that most of my team are not comfortable, and I have been visiting the students because I am entering those classrooms and I'm trying to take precautions. And I know it's not anybody's intent, but some of the conversations I had, and I heard conversation about perspective, but I think if we try to really, you can express your emotions without trying to extend guilt or anger. This is a very emotional time. And sometimes I felt a little inspired to feel like I should feel guilty for risking my family's health, which is not my intent. You know, I'm doing that to support my team members who all appreciate the efforts that I do to take that face-to-face interaction with the students who need it. And I'm there to do my job to support the students as well. And I know that they would do it as well. And I do that without judgment on their ability to do it either, because I respect them. But we're a team, and I am willing to do it. And I know that someone else would support me if I was not willing to do it. So if we can refrain from those conversations of trying to, you know, dare somebody or assume that we would not, and just keep to the facts. Because this is not an easy conversation. This is not an easy decision. We do not want to risk anybody's lives. We want to support everybody. And from what I'm hearing, we're trying to find the options. We're trying to find the creative solutions. We're engaging in our thought partners in our community, which we all value, all of you. And I know it sounds a little preachy, but this is a very emotional time. I mean, these meetings have been very emotional. And I really want to sit here and I want to listen to all of you. And I know the staff does too. But we're asking for just patience, and we can get through this. We'll get through this together.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jeff. Next up is Vivek.
Okay, my question is really around that this 23 pages is really a guidance and not a mandate. And there's very little information about in these 24 and 23 pages about the remote learning. So when can we hear what this district is going to do, and when can we get a chance to voice our reaction to the plan that will be presented? I mean, it clearly needs to be consistent with physical learning, having its own parity for assessment, and provide same level of content and engagement as a physical classroom, especially if the teacher is teaching at the same time while her videos, etc., are being seen by kids at home. It's not going to provide any opportunity for teachers to engage real time with students online the way they were doing when the entire learning was online. And my complementary question to this is, do we have some sort of a plan to engage both parents and teachers with subsequent surveys, knowing that the situation and the environment is changing rapidly almost every 3 to 4 weeks? Why can't we have rolling surveys every few weeks to gauge the mood of the parents and the teachers?
So to answer your first question, as Mr. Arnett mentioned, so next week on the 8th, district staff will present potential plans to the Board of Education for their consideration. And then while no decisions will be made, we expect that the Board of Education will provide us with direction for moving forward. And the timeline is for decisions to be made the middle to late part of July about the different plans.
And then I can jump in regarding the cycle back. I wouldn't want to commit to multiple surveys, just given the fact that school year is slated to start in mid to late August, but we will definitely, once the options are known, be circling back to all staff members, as well as communicating the options as we know it to the parents as well. So it's a little bit wanting to not get ahead of that piece, and it's just one part of the process at a time in order to keep everybody on the same page. But we will definitely be circling back.
Yes, and we will also, once we make our final decisions, once we're into whatever those options are for 4 to 6 weeks or so, we will be following up again to take a pulse on how things are going once we actually start as well.
Thank you all. Next is Susmita Chatterjee.
Hi, can you hear me? Thank you. Yes. So first of all, all these sessions have been really helpful, so thanks a lot for hosting them. Second of all, so I'm a parent with an incoming first grader at Cherry Chase, and I've had a wonderful distance learning experience with our teacher, Mrs. Carter. However, I do recognize the need for going back to school in some form. Number one, because I am an essential worker and have been going in to work for the last 16 weeks. And it has been heartbreaking to see my son wait at the door for me to come back. So for him to have some kind of safe learning environment, whether it's 3 hours a day, is enough. But they don't have recess, they don't have lunch breaks. They just go in for 3 hours and practice safe distancing and learn and come back home. That would be enough, and that would keep us safe. The second of all, since I am in the healthcare industry, I realize we've started testing ourselves on a regular basis. I just got myself tested this week. So I would encourage teachers and families to get tested. They're free and available, so then we can stop the asymptomatic spread of this virus. And then, that's one way we can check that it doesn't spread. That's the worry. If you have symptoms, you will not send your kids to school. But if you don't have symptoms and you land up in school, you will spread it. So I think certain things like that. And I absolutely advocate options for everybody. Folks who want to stay at home, folks who want to go to school. But we need to provide options. And thank you so much for hosting these. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Susmita. Next up is Leslie Stahl.
Yes, hello, thank you. I'm a parent of 2 kids at Ellis, and I wanted to share that honestly, distance learning was really hard for us, and I did strongly support going back to school and strongly oppose continuing distance learning. But I also didn't realize how the rest of my community felt. And over the last 3 forums, I have learned how the teachers in our schools feel. And I feel differently now because I don't want my opinion and my convenience. I work, my husband works, my kids need school. I have a kid with an IEP who needs it. But if teachers don't want to come back, I don't understand what the huge push is for and why there's not more opportunity for compromise. And I'm wondering if you can explain what is on the line for making a different decision. So other districts in our county are pursuing hybrid models or other things. I understand what the county's guidelines are. I've read them and I'm trying to understand, is it state funding? Is it local funding? What is driving the decision? Thank you.
I guess the best way I can answer that is a lot of districts who put out plans previous to this week are going back and rethinking their plans with the new knowledge of the state mandate and the county guidelines. So what's at stake is really compliance with the state guidelines. There's some funding, but I shouldn't minimize that. That's significant. But we need to adhere to what the state law says.
Next up is Agnes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I am a middle schooler from Sunnyvale Middle School, and I would just like to say that I would love to go back to school, but I also want to keep the teachers safe. And I don't actually really know what to do, but is there a possible way to get creative and think outside the box and do all 3 at once? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Agnes. What a pleasure to have a student tonight. Thank you for joining us. So next is Emily Tripiano.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I teach 3rd grade at Cumberland, and sorry if my voice shakes because I might get emotional. I will be nowhere as eloquent as some of the previous speakers. I completely believe that distance learning can't replace in-person teaching as it was prior to March 13th. But I am filled with fear and anxiety going back into the classroom as it may affect my very small bubble of my father who is 80 and my son who is 2. Some of the questions that I have that have come up as I've listened to other speakers is, what if a teacher has a family in their cohort that doesn't believe in COVID-19 and the associated risks? What will we do if we have a defiant student that mirrors the adults we see in public without masks, coughing on others, etc.? You did talk about specialized masks for one-on-one, for special ed and RSP. Is this also being considered for the classroom teacher, as we have students with IEPs, 504s, RTI plans, both for academic help as well as extension, and students with social emotional needs, where we do have to work one-on-one with them as well in close proximity? There was that teacher survey a while ago, but the questions were very focused, and the information gathered, at least as it reflects me as a person, is limited. I do want to, I'll try to be fast, the fear is real and the anxiety is real. There was a case at a KinderCare in Oregon this week where in a setting where the students outweigh the number of teachers, the number of teachers out of 20 was 12 and the students 8. So the teachers are at a greater risk, even if only one person comes in. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Next is Rosa Felix.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much for having these forums. My name is Rosa, and I have an incoming 6th grader and 8th grader SMS. I'm gonna be brief. I'm gonna be completely transparent. I do agree with David Cohen and Jill Borges. I do acknowledge and understand the concerns I'm hearing tonight from all our teachers and our educators and some parents. I know the anxiety and fear among the community and contracting COVID-19 from returning back to in-person instruction is completely understandable. However, being a parent with a daughter with special needs and learning differences, it has been an overwhelming experience and a real struggle, to say the least. Students need peer interaction. Keeping them home will inhibit their social and emotional health. So I really do like Jeff's statement. We will get through this together. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosa. Next up is Zayn Sparrow.
Hi, my name is Tom Sparrow. Zayan is my wife, so we're both here. I'm going to try to keep this brief, obviously, because I know we're already running over. Just to give my perspective, we just moved into the district from out of state, so we are new to the district. We might not be, we don't know everybody all that well. Our son will be going into 4th grade in the fall at Bishop Elementary. Our oldest son, our youngest son, will actually be starting kindergarten. So I just want to, number one, express my support for the people who have their fears and anxieties about returning to school, especially the teachers and staff that are concerned about it. I don't think I can add anything beyond what everybody's already mentioned tonight. All the points that I kind of want to make were brought up. I want to maybe recommend or implore 2 things. One is a possibility of maybe resending out that survey that was sent at the end of the school year. Seeing that things have changed kind of drastically, I feel, between when that was received and now, and you might get some different responses. Number 2, I understand that obviously you're putting together plans to present next week. So you have not much time to think about it, but I think somebody mentioned before, choice is what's going to be important, not just perhaps medically dictated, but what people are comfortable with doing with their children and their lives. And I think maybe it's being thought of, and I know you guys have to follow the state guidance, so this is maybe more on the state or on the county, how they're determining things, but it feels to me like it's backwards. And that a focus should be made on how do we improve the distance learning, while definitely making sure that going to school physically is a safe option, so that the people that do need to go to school, whether that's special education, whether that's parents that are both working and need to have that in their lives are going to be safer because the people who can stay home would be able to and better protect those who can't. And hopefully that keep other people like Jeff himself safe as well. I thank you for that. And thank you all for allowing us to speak.
Thank you so much. Next up is PAC 462, Sunnyvale.
Well, that always happens. It's Michelle Eugenie, and too many Zoom accounts. I have an incoming second grader at Cherry Chase and sixth grader at SMS. And I've been listening to all the meetings. I attend everything. You guys all know me, but I haven't spoken up. I am one of those lucky 30 that are on the group that's going to be meeting tomorrow. But I did want to share with the larger community the thought, and the previous caller just hit it right on the head there. Flip the script here on what we're trying to prioritize, what we're trying to really expend some energy on, and the idea of people going back safely and comfortably is as much a psychological one as a laboratory testable one. And the definition of what is safe right now is very unknown. There's just too much unknown for people to feel safe apart from them telling themselves that they're safe. And so I would very much encourage the district to look at the fall as a pilot program for returning to campus. Utilize those individuals, families, staff, and faculty who feel safe and confident in returning to campus, and be very conscious and intentional in treating it like a pilot, where you are determining feasibility, you're determining durability, cost effectiveness, and you are monitoring in conscious ways, not just confirming your bias, but being purposeful and attentive to methods for areas for improvement, and doing this in a way that shares knowledge across the district to help establish consistency. And oh man, I'm already at 2 minutes. The be creative, be consistent, prioritize, build trust. I'm sorry, but the Jaws movie keeps coming to mind here. We're telling people it's safe to go back in the water, and they don't believe you. I'm sorry. They don't. They feel something else in their gut. And so in order to build trust, to build that comfort, something else is needed. Clearly the community is reaching for something else. And I think a pilot could really help with that by testing it out in real conditions, getting people who are willing to be on that front line, able to be on that front line, and make it work and learn and expose as few as necessary to a broader risk. No one, me included, wants to have school shut down again. That is a whole new level of trauma. If I have to explain to my 7-year-old who died because that caused us to have to go back into a lockdown situation, is unfathomable. So anyway, thank you for listening.
Thank you, Michelle. Next up is Lori.
Hi, thank you. I have 2 kids at San Miguel, and thank you for these meetings. I can understand the push for in-person and distance. My question is, or questions, what happens if a person has symptoms or tests positive to the cohort? Will they have distance learning? What happens if a teacher has to be out? How will they continue learning? If one kid has to be distanced, I assume my other kid will have to be. How will they continue to learn? That's what I had to ask. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't want to misstate the protocols, but they're included in the county guidance. All those different scenarios are included in the county guidance, so we'd need to follow those.
Next up is Robin Cherry.
Hi, everyone. I'm Robin Cherry. I teach 6th grade at Columbia Middle School. I really appreciate that you're having these forums. I have a lot of respect for you all. I'll keep this really short. I support what every other teacher has said in this forum and forums in the past. I originally wanted to use this time to advocate for the options to be available to everyone, parents and staff, no questions asked, no judgment, because I understand there are different needs and different levels of comfort. So I support that completely. But now I want to use my time to just say a huge thank you to the parent, Leslie, who just spoke about originally wanting to return to school. And after hearing members of the community and hearing from teachers, she changed her mind. I have not felt so heard and that our voices matter more than I did after hearing her speak just now. So thank you, Leslie. And I encourage all of us to listen with such an open heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Next is Christine Penland.
Yes, hi. I'm Christine Penland. I'm the art teacher at Columbia Middle School. I've been there for 23 years, and I am going to make this really quick. I am so passionate about the arts and music and art and teaching in general, because, you know, I've been there for 23 years, but I think that all of my cohorts and teachers among us feel that we need to be safe. We need to respect our students, respect our parents, respect ourselves and our families. And what it comes down to is coming home at the end of the day, if we do need to go in the classroom, and knowing that we might be infected with this is pretty scary. And I think everybody feels that even when you go to the grocery store or wherever you go outside, it's a scary feeling. So I hope that the decision that is made is a good one. I hope that we come together and realize that online learning was actually pretty good. I even in the arts, it was very, very difficult, but I managed. And I think that we can be creative. We can all be creative with what we are doing, not only in the arts, but in our spaces in the district and the teachers and everywhere we are. So thank you for listening, and thank you to all the teachers and parents as well. I feel you, and let's move forward and hope for a really good turnout. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Last two, Annie Golden.
Hi. First off, I want to say thank you for holding this forum. It has been very helpful. And I do appreciate that those are very, very difficult decisions, and there is not a good solution. So it's a difficult situation, difficult position to be in. I do understand the challenges of remote learning, especially where it comes to equity and social emotional health. With that said, I was very concerned on the focus on in-person learning that came from the county guidelines. I do agree that having stable cohorts can make a difference in minimizing risk. I have an incoming 5th grader at Cumberland. We had 32 kids in class last year. I do not see how having a stable cohort of 32 children is going to minimize the risk. It's just too big. So if the push is for most people who don't have a health condition in the kid or their families to come to school, that just would not be a realistically safe cohort. So I wanted to bring that to mind and ask, how would that work? Thank you.
Thank you, Annie.
I know we're short on time, but just to briefly address your concern there, we recognize that. And so we will look at numbers across the district in order to ensure to the best we can that the cohorts make sense.
Thank you. And final speaker, JL.
Hi, I am Abby Lang. I am an incoming 7th grader at Sunnyvale Middle School, and I would love to be able to go back to school, you know, just the way it was before, but I know that just isn't possible in the current situation. And we need to, even though I myself am not really at risk to the virus as much as other people, there are some amazing teachers at these schools, and I don't want to put them at risk by going to school. And although distance learning isn't very fun, but it works, and the decision we make now doesn't have to apply to the entire year. We can start out with distance learning in the fall, and maybe after Christmas break, we can start doing hybrid or even 5-day at some of the schools, and just adjust as the situation, because as other people have said, it's very fluid and has changed a lot just over the past 2 weeks, and we don't know what it's going to be like later. But as of right now, I don't really feel safe going back to school. Definitely not 5 days a week, maybe not even hybrid. But I do hope we have options for everyone. You know, if they need to go back to school because of whatever reason, that we might be able to let them in some way. And if they want to do distance learning, that we have the option for them to get internet and computers and stuff and be able to do that. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And I think it's great that our last speaker was one of our student speakers. So that's, I think,
perfect.
I want to thank everyone who participated, whether it was by listening or by speaking. And I agree with, I really appreciate with what Robin Cherry said about having open minds and being open to other points of view. And I think everyone on the panel, the school board certainly is of that mindset, as is the district administration. These are hard decisions, and we want to make them together to provide the best possible outcome for our community that we can. So before I give the last word to our school board members, I just want to remind you that we do have a Board of Education meeting, a study session on the 8th, that's next Wednesday. The format of that will be, there'll be a presentation from staff first, then there'll be an opportunity for the Board of Education to discuss and talk and deliberate, and then the last portion of it is for community comment. So with that, oh, and that meeting starts at 6:30, which is a different time than usual. Starts at 6:30 on Wednesday. Mr. Arnett or Ms. Newkirk, if you'd like to have the final word, you don't have to, but just wanted to give you the opportunity.
I would just like to thank everyone who participated. I appreciate the additional time that it took to set things up. We're committed to having open dialogue with our community. We're not making this decision in isolation. It is making a decision with you. And the board is listening, and we'll take all of that into consideration. But flexibility is the big value that I heard coming out of this particular session tonight. And because it's not an agendized meeting, I do not want to give any other opinions or anything along those lines, but I just wanted to reflect that I really heard a lot about flexibility, really appreciate everyone's participation, and we'll take all of these inputs into our process and take them to heart. I know every comment was very heart-filled. Thank you.
I know I had a little bit of a say, but I do want to thank everybody for coming out and participating in this one and the other ones we've held, and the parents, teachers, staff members, especially the students. That was awesome. And I do appreciate the time, and I especially like the comments about listening to each other and extending your empathy and letting that sway your view on the situation as well. That was pretty meaningful, and I think that's another benefit of these community engagement opportunities. So thank you for taking the time, and thank you, staff, for, I know it's a long week, but hanging in there and taking the time to host these as well.
Thanks, Jeff. Okay, this concludes our community forum. Thank you, everyone, and have a good evening.
Actually, Mike, one quick thing. If we can make sure we get the comment email out in the chat, as well as maybe verbally say that. Aaliyah, do you want to?
Yes, thank
Okay,
you.
sorry.
If
We just want
anyone
to make
had
sure.
any remaining questions, or if anything comes to mind that you wanted to share, you can always email them to meetingcomments, correct, at SESD.org. And all of our board members see that, as well as our superintendent. So that's always an option for you guys. But thank you for sticking with us and for sharing your comments tonight. We really appreciate it.